All right, well, so far we talked about transformative learning from a very basic standpoint. We talked about the three basic things that happen once you have the disorienting dilemma. We've got the critical reflection, reflective discourse, and then new outlooks and behaviors. But Maslow breaks this down into 10 more intricate steps, and what I'm going to do is share those steps with you and then give you an example so you can see it sort of come to life. So here are the 10 steps that Maslow talks about in particular. First, you've got the disorienting dilemma, right? So that's step one. So this is some form of disorientation that occurs for the learner, and this could be any kind of learner. What we're going to do is take an example from the work that I did in my own dissertation, which was on transformative learning, but transformative learning that happened under the disorientation of end-of-life discussions. So it turns out that 65% of the population will actually end up having some form of grave prognosis where it's going to be kind of shocking to them. They're going to know. So for instance, cancer is something that's pretty common as a grave prognosis. So there's a really good story that came out about a woman named Erin Brown who was diagnosed with cancer, end-stage breast cancer, and was completely distraught. So you've got a woman who is just, her world as she knew it was sort of just collapsed right in front of her. And of course, that definitely qualifies for something called disorientation. But second, the second out of 10 steps is self-examination to explore anxieties and attachments. And you can imagine the level of difficulty this was for Erin, how much work she had to do thinking about her life, leave-taking. She was a mother, she was a wife, and so there was an awful lot going on right here. And it's not to say that you just skip from number one to number two. There's a lot involved. I mean, and there's some going back and forth, and anybody who's been in any kind of a situation that's disorienting knows that it's not really a straightforward thing. But we might call these guideposts along the way to know that you are actually going in the right direction for transformation. So after some self-examination on her anxieties and attachments, Erin then looked at critical assessment of her assumptions. So we've got anxieties, attachments, and now we're at the level of assumptions. And she's looking at her assumptions. Mainly her main worry, her main anxiety was that as a mom, she wouldn't be able to take care of her daughter in the way that a mother can, that maybe a male figure can't. And she was really very, very concerned about this. And so she started thinking about her assumptions. What is a mom? What is motherhood? What do mothers do in particular? What sorts of life's lessons do I want my daughter to learn? And this is a very careful analysis over, if I had lived the rest of my life and I was afforded that, what would I actually do as a mother? What role would I play? Okay, so the fourth step is I'm going to sort of encapsulate this with the word solidarity, which is really sort of a comfort in recognizing that other people are in the same situation. So there are people who are in support groups. If you think about Alcoholics Anonymous, this is one of the things that occurs is that you find power knowing that you're not alone. You don't feel like marginalized from society, that you're part of a larger group of people who is experiencing something very, very similar to you. And that gives you some sort of an emotional power and a good attitude, at least, to try to pick yourself up and try to do something with what you've got. So sense of solidarity is number 4. Number 5 is exploring options for new roles. So this is a really difficult thing, right? So how could I take on a new role, right? So it's not the idea of taking on a new role as a mom, but taking on a new role as mom as educator or facilitator of someone who's learning through their own upbringing and through their own adulthood. And for a woman, there are some key points along the way that a mom would have some really good power in talking to her daughter about and relating to the daughter about, like the first breakup and so on and so forth. So she started thinking about her new roles and then moved into number 6, which is planning a course of action. And somewhere between these two steps, somewhere in between, she found the ability to really break it all down for her husband, and they began talking about what does it mean, okay, if this is what it means to be a mom, and this is what it means to facilitate learning from my daughter, but I've got this thing standing in the way, which we call death. What do I do? Can I still do it? So the original course of action, which was sort of just assumed, was that she would just live on and be able to share life's lessons with her daughter little by little. But then the husband said, well, gosh, maybe what we could do is record you sharing those lessons ahead of time, and then we might even play them at the points in time where the daughter needs them the most. So this is a whole entirely different course of action, which is videotaping in anticipation of the events that life will, bring eventually. And this way the mom can live on in the daughter's life, still play the role of facilitator in a way that she wouldn't have otherwise if she didn't plan a new course of action. So number 7, once you plan a new course of action, you're acquiring new skills and knowledge in order to carry it out. So just like I'm standing in front of this board writing down all this big list, this didn't come easily to me. I had to figure out how the heck to do it. We've got lights in the room, we've got a recording, we've got all sorts of things going on, a mic here. So for Erin, it was the same thing. She had to think about, how do I videotape, how do I store it, how do we create a system that I feel comfortable with, so this will be given to my daughter at really appropriate times in her life. So acquiring new skills and knowledge and planning was a really big part of that. And step number 8 is a provisional, call it a provisional, trying of new roles. So she actually did the recordings and tested them out, looked at them, edited them, made sure that she was comfortable with them. Number 9 is building confidence and competence. And she was able to do that. Number 10 is reintegration into life based on new perspective. And that's precisely what she did. So at the end of the day, she went from this stage of absolute sheer disorientation and helplessness, because the key anxiety that she had was that she wouldn't continue to be able to be a mother in any way. But through this process, through these 10 phases, even though they might not have been perfectly clean all the way through, but through those, maybe we call them guideposts, she was able to take a disorienting dilemma, examine her values, figure out a new way to continue the same goals and values just through a different avenue. And that is a really good example of the 10 steps of transformative learning per Maslow. Next, what we'll do is we'll get into some more of the influences on Maslow, and then talk a little bit about the critiques of Maslow's theory, because as with every theory, it's not a law, and there are certain things to critique.